The Deep was the second book that I have read by Nick Cutter. The first book was The Troop, which was pretty alright. The Deep, however, I was very surprised at how much I enjoyed The Deep. I went into this book really expecting about a C, maybe a C+ level material, and I came out pretty well surprised, actually. This book is not particularly long. The Deep is only 394 pages. That is approximately 137,000 words. It is a fairly well-paced book. The beginning was a little bit slow, and the end dragged just a little bit in some ways, but the vast majority of the book was very well paced. The ending of the book definitely fell apart just a little bit, but not nearly enough to kill the book for me. The rest of the book was such an enjoyable experience, such a horrific experience, that I enjoyed it. Can you enjoy a horrific experience? Whatever. I was very intrigued by the presented plot of The Deep. A miracle substance called ambrosia has been found at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. A team of scientists was sent to study the ambrosia in a research station specifically crafted to withstand the 8-mile deep pressure. When communications fail, 2 brave souls descend to the station to discover the problem and fix it, only to find something horrible has happened, and the worst is yet to come. Despite the brevity of that little synopsis that I gave you there, Nick Cutter really does pack quite a lot into this story. The tone of the book is pretty consistently bleak. It starts bleak, it's bleak in the middle, and it's bleak at the very end. It is just... oh man, the book is not a happy book. It is actively a downer. The book's pretty fucked up. There's lots of moments of real good body horror. There's good moments of psychological horror. All together, it really does nail the horror aspect pretty well. Nick Cutter's prose is okay. I'm not a fan of it, really. It doesn't do me any particular favors, but it's serviceable. It gets the job done. His writing reminds me quite a bit of Dean Koontz in that it's really clunky a lot of the times, but it still has enough of a charm about it that it's going to draw me through the rest of the story without too many problems. Koontz is the best of the middle grade authors in my opinion, and Nick Cutter is a cut below him, but whatever. Most of this book, as I said, takes place at the bottom of the ocean, which is really good. I love fiction that takes place at the bottom of the ocean for whatever reason. I love BioShock. I love The Abyss. I love fucking Leviathan was good. I think Deep Star 6 was pretty fucking fun. Fishbowl by A. Catherine Black, and that's actually my favorite story inside this book that I was published in back in 2016. I obviously love fiction that is set underwater. I don't know why. I've never tried to write anything really set underwater myself, but I love it. It's just so much fun in my opinion. I love underwater fiction, so my opinion of The Deep very well may be biased here. The characters that we follow through this book are perfectly serviceable. Very few of them actually stood out to me. I have a feeling that, after a couple of years' time, I'm not really going to remember most of these characters. They're just going to be kind of in the background. This book is very high concept. It's mostly about what happens in the book, and not as much about drawing the characters out. Our main character is Luke. He feels like a pretty good, average, everyday, whoever kind of a guy. He's a veterinarian. He grew up, living a pretty hard knock life. He had a real shit parents. He had one really shitty parent and one less shitty, but still pretty shitty parent. He was a father, but his son ended up going missing several years before the beginning of this book. He's one of the 2 that ends up descending down to the research station in order to go find his brother, which is one of the 2 doctors on the station. We follow him for almost the entire story. The other character that goes down with Luke, that is Alice. Alice was pretty good. I enjoyed her for the most part. Her history, she worked for the Navy in a submarine at some point, and so that qualifies her to be able to shuttle people up and down from the surface to the bottom of the ocean. And we get to follow her. Well, we don't really follow her. We get to hang out with her a little bit through Luke throughout the book, and she's pretty good. She's fairly stoic, makes a couple of weird, crass statements throughout it. I don't know. She was pretty okay. She was at least memorable. I don't know. I particularly enjoyed Alice. She was one of the better characters in this book. LB, the dog, Little B, obviously, it's a dog, so the dog's great. We'd give her a treat if we could. Luke's brother is down here as well, a guy named Clayton. Clayton is one of the scientists that's researching the ambrosia down at the bottom of the sea. And man, he's just a sociopath. He's a douchebag. He's not very fun. He was not featured in many scenes throughout the book, and I'm pretty happy for that because he was just okay. The other two doctors that were down in the research station, we really don't spend very much time with either of them. We don't really get to learn too much about their backstories or who they are or any of their habits or anything. So Dr. Westlake and Dr. Toy, neither of them were particularly amazing, but they were fine. They got the job done. Luke's mother, Luke and Clayton's mother, wow, what a piece of shit she is. I hated that lady. She was terrible, but was also obviously one of the better parts of the book because of that. He flashes back to having to deal with her a number of times, and boy oh boy, isn't she just a shit. We are now on to the spoilery stuff. We have to address the elephant in the room. The Gets, the disease, the whole reason why anybody is going down to the bottom of the ocean in the first place. This is where I've seen a number of people online break and say that they don't like this book. There was one specific post that I read through on Reddit. This person just blasted the Deep because they hated the fact that Ambrosia was never brought up and reutilized at the end of the story. As a matter of fact, the Figmen at the end of the story directly state that it was just like kind of a coincidence that that thing happened, and not everything's under their control. And it's like, what? Well, then why the fuck did you have it there? It could have been anything that brought them down there. It could have been curing leukemia. It could have been literally any reason to have brought the people down here, because the ambrosia is this miracle cure. That alone was a great reason to go down to the bottom of the ocean and study it. Why did we have to come up with the Gets, right? That is a great concept. I love the idea of this forgetting disease, this plague that makes people forget, but he doesn't capitalize on it whatsoever. Why? This is such a great disease, and you just piss it away. The only way that Nick Cutter capitalizes on the Gets in the entire fucking story is when, and this kills me, it's because Luke can't forget the pain of having lost his son and his marriage, and he can't forget the pain of his childhood. Like, sure, don't get me wrong, I've gone through some shit, you've gone through some shit, everybody's gone through some shit that we do want to forget, and it's kind of ironic that if everybody else is forgetting shit, why can't we forget? Okay, we've got to talk about the Tickle Trunk as well, because my god, I loved the Tickle Trunk. The Tickle Trunk might actually be my favorite part of this book. There was nothing that prepared me for the Tickle Trunk. I did not think there was going to be a Tickle Trunk. Nobody told me the Tickle Trunk was going to exist, and I tell you what, that's for the best, man. I'm not going to tell you anything about it other than the Tickle Trunk exists, because it was my favorite fucking thing in this book. At first, I was very hesitant. I was like, where are we going with this? Why are we doing this? But I was happy with it personally. I hope you enjoyed the Tickle Trunk even half as much as I enjoyed the Tickle Trunk. It's the name. It's the name that really sells it. I don't know why. Why is it the Tickle Trunk? Obviously because Luke's mother, right? We know why it's the Tickle Trunk. It's because Luke's mother decides to name it the Tickle Trunk. But why? That is such a weird name. Like, I hate that. That's terrible. Why? And I love it. It's so good. The Figmen at the end of the book were like, I don't know, really cool at first when we first got to see him. I was pretty hyped up and excited to get there, and then it just kind of like dragged on for a bit. It was like, okay, well, you're just gonna like explain everything, but then just like also piss on everything by explaining it. It kind of sucked that we explained everything. This circles back to the Gets again from a minute ago. They specifically stated that there was no link between them and the Gets, right? And it's just like, they didn't have to say anything at all, and the horror would have been even better. Each of the characters' deaths were fucking horrible. My god, were they fucking horrible. So, first of all, LB's death was the most brutal and the most graphic in the entire book. It was very sad, actually. Like, it was the only one that I actually felt something at, like, deeply. It was like, oh shit, wow. Anybody that does not like graphic death of animals, this will not be your book. Alice's death was properly horrifying. Alice just becomes part of, like, the honeybee comb hive. It's gross. Dr. Toy's death was also pretty interesting, just having the station, like, collapse in on itself to kill him, but just really slowly. Man, that would fucking suck. To conclude, I must say that I really enjoyed The Deep. I'm going to give this book a B+. Altogether, The Deep was really good, but it wasn't great. Nick Cutter's prose was just a little bit too clunky for me. Too many elements were left hanging, unaddressed, and the characters should have had stronger personalities. However, the internal and external horror in this book were very well done, and the pacing was fast enough that it never felt boring. Now, am I going to reread this book? Probably, no time soon, but out of Nick Cutter's stuff, this is probably going to be the first that I reread, unless I find something else that I like better. The beginning and the end of this book certainly had issues, but that was not bad enough to drive me away from it whatsoever. The Deep was a great improvement over The Troop. I'm very excited to try what, Little Heaven next? I think that's his next book. I'm very excited to try that one. I would definitely recommend The Deep to you. I would also recommend The Circus in American Fantasy. That's my book. Surprise, I'm gonna sell you shit. Here I have The Circus, an American fantasy. The Circus follows Penny Robinson, who finds herself trapped in an enormous, otherworldly circus where capitalism is king, crime runs rampant, and souls are currency. I also have Portraits in Bloodlines. Portraits in Bloodlines is 23 short stories in the horror, sci-fi, slipstream, and other genres. A little bit of everything for everyone in Portraits in Bloodlines. If you're curious about any of the DVDs that I have behind me, my wife is documenting our collection process over on her channel. Check the description for links to that.